Hello, all of my history-loving friends. Welcome back to the world of Madame Morbid, where I am again in a cemetery, as I often am. This is a history channel. I cover the weird, the dark, the mysterious, the morbid on this channel. If you like what you see, please subscribe to my channel. Please like the video. I upload once a week. Today we are finishing the series on the bald knobbers. The best way to enjoy this series, if this is your first video, the thing you need to do is you need to go back and you need to start at episode 1. There are 5 episodes. The first one covers how the group got formed here in Taney County. Episode 2 is conflicts that ultimately led to the downfall of the group. Episode 3 goes to Christian County, where it was a completely different organization, founded for the same reasons, but they handled it very differently. They were much more violent, and that went very badly there. It ended up with a home invasion and this horrible murder, followed by a long trial, the downfall of the whole group in Christian County, most of them being arrested, and a botched hanging of 3 bald knobbers. I've done the episodes a little bit in chronological order, and this is going to close it out. We are ending the series where we began, here in Forsyth Cemetery, where a large number of Taney County bald knobbers are buried, which is why it is nicknamed Bald Knobber Cemetery. Who we are here to see is Nat Kinney. He is over here somewhere. The first episode tells you a little bit about his life. Today we are going to tell you about his death. This looks different today. I think they have redone her headstone. It looks like they added more dirt. I don't know if this is a new stone or if they just relaid the original. Interesting. Just a little background information. Kinney had moved here from, he lived a lot of different places before he ended up here in 1884. He was a Civil War veteran. He had served for the Union. Most bald knobbers had. Most bald knobbers were Republicans politically, except for Nat Kinney, who was a staunch Democrat. And he had run for office several times and he always lost. It's hard to know if he lost because he was a Democrat or some other reason. If people thought he shouldn't have a leadership position, I don't know. But the group got in trouble with the governor. Again, this is something talked about in a previous episode. And he had demanded that the group disband. And Nat Kinney complied. When they were asked to disband the group, he did. He had a meeting. It was sort of like what we would call a press conference, and announced that the group was done for. On paper they were, I guess, but things were still happening. People were being raided at night. To this day, people around here still think possibly bald knobbers are roaming around. And according to some of the comments I've gotten on my previous videos, I guess people are still kind of sensitive over the issue of whether you're a bald knobber or an anti-bald knobber. We're going to go to the anti-bald knobber cemetery today as well. I wasn't able to make it over there the last time I was here, so that's something we're going to do. We're here at the Snap Graveyard. This is also known as the anti-bald knobber cemetery. Again, because so many people who were opposed or criticized the bald knobbers are buried here, including Sam Snap. I'm going to try to find him if I can. We talked about the death of Sam Snap in episode 2. But basically things got nasty. A lot of people really did not support what the bald knobbers were up to. Started out good, but there did quickly develop a faction that had issues with the way they were doing business, basically. And then people started getting killed. Emily Snap. Here he is. Samuel Harrison Snap. He was killed May of 1886 after teasing a bald knobber. That bald knobber, as you might remember, escaped from the jail and was captured. I think it was well over a year later, and he was killed as they were trying to capture him. But one reason I did come out here is this anti-bald knobber sentiment in Taney County did influence the death of Nat Kinney, because he got involved in a divorce case that involved an anti-bald knobber, and the lawyer for the wife was a supporter of the bald knobbers and a friend of Nat Kinney. So I think you can see where this is going. Now let's head over and go see where he was killed. Nat Kinney was ultimately killed somewhere in this area. He was killed in the Berry General Store, which was about a block from the Everett Saloon, which was down that way by the resort over there, kind of at the corner. You can see the jail from here. He got killed over a divorce case. So Mr. Berry owned this store that was somewhere in this region. As you can see, now it's a playground. He owned this store, and he was getting a nasty divorce from his wife, Ann. Ann was represented by George Taylor. George Taylor was friends with Nat Kinney. He was a bald knobber. Mr. Berry was an anti-bald knobber. George and Ann started having an affair. The reason Ann was divorcing Mr. Berry was because he cheated on her constantly. She was arguing that she wanted divorce because of that, and she also wanted his assets of at least $5,000 taken to be her upkeep. When Mr. Berry found out about Ann and George, he demanded that, you know, she's cheating on me, and so he wanted charges brought against them. George Taylor had moved into a property owned by Ann. I guess they were actually living together. And so George went on trial, and Nat defended George for this cohabitation charge. When it all gets said and done, this store that was located somewhere in here was going to be a part of this divorce decree, and Nat said that he would come in and he would be the receiver for this divorce action, and that he would inventory the store. And he didn't know that Mr. Berry had whoever was going to be the receiver of this, he had vowed to kill. On the day that he was killed, Kinney was in the store, and Billy and James Miles came in. Seemed they wanted a drink out of the water barrel. An argument started up between Nat Kinney and Billy Miles. Billy says that just before all of this happened, Nat Kinney yelled, "Billy Miles, you son of a bitch, I'm going to kill you," and then went for his gun. At which point Billy claimed he went for his gun too, and he was faster, and he shot Kinney in the arm, which ricocheted into his body, and then he shot him 3 more times in the chest, stomach, and back, and he died instantly. William Beeman was a bystander. He corroborated the story that he said he was going to kill Billy Miles. After he killed Kinney, reloaded his gun, he stepped outside, he threw the shells casings into the street and said he had just killed Nat Kinney and he had done it in self-defense. James Berry was inside the newspaper office with James DeLong, who was Nat Kinney's stepson at the time, and because he was there, it really looked suspicious. James DeLong claimed that at the sound of the shots, that James Berry told him to stay put, to not go outside. But there is conflicting accounts on that. Other people say that James Berry just merely walked outside onto the street to see what was going on, just like everybody else, and didn't prevent anybody from going anywhere. Either way, it looked really bad. What was he doing there? To this day, nobody knows what James Berry was doing in that newspaper office right next to the killing when it happened. So it led to this theory that Billy Miles was doing a hit on Nat Kinney. Whether that was the case or not, it just looked strange. It looked suspicious. All of this is just, it's really hard to know what really happened. Inside the store, several people, it's kind of, the crime scene was just flooded with people right after it happened to check out the body. There was a gun lying next to it, and nobody seemed to know where the gun came from. Bald Knobber supporters said, oh, well, it was his son's gun. Or they said, well, Billy Miles planted it there to make it look like it was self-defense, but really the gun would have been behind the counter. Who knows? There were all kinds of different stories about where the gun was and who placed it there and all of this. But Billy Miles and James Berry were both charged with the murder, and they were taken into custody. And they ended up in the jail that was specifically built for the Bald Knobbers in Christian County, which we talked about in the last 2 episodes. Miles made bail, but James Berry could not afford it, so he remained in jail while Miles returned home and just tried to stay away from people and somewhat lived a normal life for the time being while he awaited trial. In November, there's an election. Republicans sweep it. It shows that pro-Bald Knobber faction still has a lot of political power in Taney County. And it leads Miles and Berry to worry that if they have their trial in Taney County, they will not get a fair trial. So they do ask for a change of venue, and they will be moved to Greene County, Springfield. In the spring of 1889, Ed Funk came to Taney County, and it's unclear why and what he was doing here. He had not been deputized by Galba Branson, who had won sheriff in that November election. It seems that perhaps he was more of a detective, which in those days was kind of a euphemism for a hired gun or some kind of bounty hunter, maybe. He ends up getting involved in this anti-Bald Knobber mess. It's 4th of July, and there is a picnic in a park outside of Kirbyville, and we are getting ready to go check that out. Ed Funk had gone to this picnic. I don't know if he went specifically with Branson or if he just happened to be at the party and helped out when things got weird. But things go badly. I'm here at the site, the former site of the park where the 4th of July celebration was taking place in 1889. Here's the stream. It's mostly dry now. There's a little bit of water in there. And over here, you can see a very old culvert that's been here for quite some time. And this was the landmark I was told to look for. To find the spot where Ed Funk and Galba Branson were killed. So somewhere in here, this was a park of some sort. 3 of the Miles brothers came here. Here's the spring. It was Billy, Emmanuel, and James all came to this 4th of July celebration. And they came armed because they were worried about bald knobbers wanting revenge. So they were protecting themselves. Sheriff Branson and Ed Funk somehow knew that they were armed and decided they were going to arrest them for carrying concealed weapons. The boys had come here to get a drink, so they had walked a little bit away from the party, and Funk and Branson followed them. Funk was a little bit ahead of Branson, and he got here first. He went up to Billy, who was getting a drink out of this spring. He asked him, "Do you have a weapon?" And Billy replied that yes, he did. Billy also said, and this was said in an interview years later, that Funk told him that if he moved a muscle, he was going to blow his brains out. There wasn't much Billy could do, but Funk was not paying attention to what Billy's brothers were doing. And so James saw what was going on, saw that Billy was being threatened, and he pulled his gun and started firing. He hit Funk twice. One of those shots went right through Funk's heart, and he was dead. Branson was on his way. He saw this happen, and he starts firing at James. He fires anywhere from 3 to 6 shots. He hits him once in the groin. He gets him through the scrotum, which went into his leg. Billy, meanwhile, has gotten his gun out and shoots Branson once in, I think he gets him once in the leg, but then the second shot is in through the head, and he is dead as well. Here's a better view of that culvert. I'm not sure how old it is, but it's old. I'm just not sure if it's old enough to have been here when the shooting happened. None of these trees were here. This was all an open park, and it's just a forest now. Billy and James are both arrested for these murders. Billy, of course, still hasn't stood trial for killing Nat Kinney. Now, if the trial had stayed in Taney County, James DeLong, Nat Kinney's stepson, would have been the prosecutor of the case, because he had won prosecuting attorney in that November election also. Unfortunately for him, he wouldn't get to try that case because the change of venue had been accepted. The trial was moved to Greene County. And unfortunately, if you watched my last episode, Greene County had a very dim view of bald knobbers stemming from the Edens Green murder. To make it worse, Nat Kinney also had been in the process of suing the city of Springfield because as he was walking down a street If you have seen my video about the Tut shootout, Tut and Hickok shootout on the town square, that street where I showed you where the doctor's office, where they took Tut's body, Kinney was walking down that street that connected to that alley, and he fell into an open manhole and hurt himself quite badly. And even though he didn't actually get the money himself because he died, but his widow did. So his family had sued Springfield and they weren't happy about it. And so again, it just doesn't sound like he probably had a very fair trial either in Greene County. Whereas Taney would have been the opposite. They would have been pro bald knobber. So for James Berry, the prosecution just did not have a lot of evidence that James Berry had hired Billy Miles to kill Nat Kinney. It was all just circumstantial, looked kind of funny that he was next door when it happened, but there just wasn't enough to build a real case. Now, James Berry was convicted by a Springfield jury of assaulting George Taylor. He tried to kill him over the affair with his wife, and they did get a conviction on that. He was given 5 years in the pen. However, he and a few other inmates escaped the Greene County jail, and I guess he was never found. In the course of doing this series, I have covered so many jailbreaks. I can't even believe it. I mean, were jails just that bad back then? It's like, it's astonishing to me that it was that easy, apparently, to escape from a 19th century jail. As far as Billy Miles' trial, it's all going to come down to whether you believe Billy Miles was defending himself or not. Did he go in there specifically to kill him, or did he go in there, a fight erupt, and he defended himself? The jury ended up deciding that it was self-defense, and he was acquitted of that killing. 6 months after he was acquitted of killing Nat Kinney, Billy and James stood trial for the murder of Galba Branson. They had split it up into two. They were going to do Ed Funk and Galba Branson in separate trials. From what I've read, the prosecution did a horrible job of presenting this case. The trial only lasted 1 day, and everybody was shocked at how little evidence the prosecution put forward. There were two possibilities here. There was the possibility that Galba Branson, who was a bald knobber, and Ed Funk, who still nobody really knew why he was there, but there were some people who believed that Nat Kinney's wife had hired Ed Funk as an assassin to kill the Miles brothers, or to kill Billy in particular, because she had gotten $1,500 from suing the city of Springfield. And so there are rumors that she used that money to hire Funk as a hitman to kill Billy Miles. There's no real evidence to support this theory. And so really that's just something that people keep throwing around as a possibility, because no one really knows why Funk was here or what his role in this was. But that was basically the defense's position, that the bald knobbers were trying to get revenge and they wanted to kill Billy Miles. But it took a long time for the jury to make a decision on this one, actually. Whereas they had acquitted Billy in 30 minutes over Nat Kinney's death, but this took 16 hours of deliberation. And it was because there was one holdout. Everybody wanted to acquit except this one person, and that's how long it took to convince whoever this juror was to change their mind. And given how bad it seems like the prosecution did in presenting their case, it was probably the right decision. James DeLong had done the case, and this one was held in Christian County instead of Springfield. But the case had gone so poorly, and James DeLong, I guess, was feeling defeated, so he ended up just dropping charges on the Ed Funk murder and just let it go. Which again, constant acquittals like this is what had prompted the formation of the Bald Knobbers to begin with. There would only be one more Bald Knobber incident after this. In 1892, a prisoner who had been convicted of killing his wife was dragged from the jail, and he was lynched from a tree in a nearby cemetery. But this would be the last time that any activity could directly be associated with the Bald Knobbers. Now, there have been rumors of other things over the years, but I guess that's the official final Bald Knobber activity that it's considered. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have really enjoyed researching the Bald Knobbers. I hope you've enjoyed this series. Moving on from here, who knows? If you have ideas of things you'd like me to cover, put it in the comments. I'm going to be going to Kansas City this weekend. I'll be doing several episodes, or filming several episodes while I'm there, including the Hyatt Regency walkway collapse in 1981. I'll also be doing the Kansas City Massacre from 1933. Beyond that, I'm really not sure. I'm not sure what I'll have time for, but I'll be doing those two for sure. So look forward to that. That will be coming up, and I will see you guys next time.